All right, this is tape number 13. This is the first tape of the second part of the class. We've had our first exam, and now we're going on to a whole different kind of subject. What we're going to be talking about now is much more definitional. We're going to be defining some things. We're going to be talking about political philosophy, and then we'll get into the U.S. Constitution. And once we get into the Constitution, that's where we'll spend the rest of the semester. But I want to start with a couple of definitions. So this lecture is going to be about the definitions of two words, politics and government. Okay, so let's take politics first. What is politics? And it turns out there's a whole variety of definitions. I just want to give you some. I would suggest you write down a couple because they might be interesting. So, the political sciencey definition actually goes back to the Greek philosopher Aristotle, who said, politics is the art of the possible. The art of the possible. That's okay. A political scientist came along and said, politics is deciding who gets what, when, and how. And that's a really interesting definition. There's a lot of truth to that. The political scientist came up with that definition in 1936. And yeah, it is about deciding who gets what, when, and how. How much do they get? When do they get it? How is it going to be divided? Those are political questions. Okay? But, well, before I say but, one other definition, a modern political science definition. Politics is the process by which policy decisions are made. Politics is the process by which policy decisions are made. Okay? So, in other words, politicians have to decide things. How do they decide things? Well, they come up with definitions. They come up with decisions. And those decisions are simply politics. Simply politics. That's all it is. Okay? I'm of the opinion that we are all very familiar with politics. Okay? I believe that in our family, there's politics. You know how to do things to get things done, to get decisions made. Little kids learn this quickly, which of their parents are going to go to for things. That's politics at its simplest. Okay, there's politics on our social clubs. There's politics at the work, whatever job you have. There's politics here at McMurray. There's politics in your dorm room. There's politics in your athletic team. You name it, there is politics. Politics is simply the process by which decisions are made. Okay? Now, that's all political sciencey kind of stuff. There are a couple of other definitions that I want to share with you because they indicate something deeper. So, let me just go through those. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was the great British Prime Minister in England during World War II. And he said politics is a lot like war, except in war, they only kill you once. Okay? In other words, politics is pretty serious. They're going to go after you. Okay? They are going to go after you. Okay? Another one. Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House of Representatives back in the 1990s. When Bill Clinton was president, Newt Gingrich was his opponent. He was the Speaker of the House. He was a Republican. He was his opponent. He said politics is war without blood. Okay? Do you get a sense of the seriousness of that there? Politics is war without blood. Two other definitions. Jay Leno, the stand-up comedian, used to be host of the Today Show. He said politics is show business for ugly people. Politics is show business for ugly people. And you look at politicians, for the most part, they're not the best looking people in the world. Those good Good-looking people go into show business. The rest, they go into politics. Okay? My favorite definition. I want to show it to you. Okay? Get out my magic whiteboard and my blue marker. Politics. This definition came from James Carville. James Carville's from Louisiana, and James Carville is the former campaign manager for Bill Clinton. And he's still around, and he says to understand politics, you just look at the word politics. Poly, P-O-L-I, means many. Okay? It's Greek for many. Ticks. What are ticks? Blood-sucking insects. So what is politics? A bunch of blood-sucking insects. Okay? That's politics. Okay? My point in all this is to let you know that politics is a deadly serious game. It's how decisions are made. We're all familiar with politics. And it is played at the highest level in the United States by the politicians we study. And they take it very, very seriously. All right. Now that we've got that done, we're going to move on to the next word that we want to explore. And that word is government. Now I'm going to erase my board here. And this time, when we talk about government, what we're talking about here is we're talking about one definition instead of the 6 or 7 I just gave you. There's only one real good definition of government that I like. So I'm going to lay it out for you. Okay? Government is a social organization This definition has 3 parts. Government is a social organization that extends to the whole of society. It extends to the whole of society. And number 3, it can legitimately use force to carry out its decisions. So, what is government? It is a social organization that extends to all of society that can legitimately use force to carry out its decisions. That is government. All right? Now, I want to take a moment to go through this definition. A social organization. What does that mean? It's made up of people. People mess up. People make mistakes. People do stupid things. As a consequence, government is not the most efficient of organizations. Government is simply made up of human beings trying to do their job, doing it sometimes well and sometimes not well. What we have to confront is that government is not perfect, and it's not perfect because it's made up of people. Okay? Government usually messes up in some way, and we need to always remember that when we think about some of the things that are going on. Think about conspiracy theories, for example, and they talk about government agents doing this or that. We need to remember that the government is made up of human beings, and human beings mess up. And as a consequence, you listen to some of these conspiracy theories and you realize they're just not right because they require people to be acting perfectly, okay, without mess up, without screw ups. That's not government. Government's always going to mess up. Okay? Then it extends to the whole of society. Can you think of a part of life that is not covered by government? Think about it. What isn't covered by government? When I go to my church, guess what? There's a sign there at the church that talks about the fact that the government has approved the kitchen that's downstairs. The fire department has said how many people can be in the sanctuary of the church. There's a sign there about carrying weapons. The government is involved in my church. Government's involved in all churches, all religions. Can you kill someone as part of your religious sacrifice? No, you can't. Okay? Government's involved in church. Government's certainly involved in sex. Who can you have sex with? Can you have sex with a little kid? No. Government's there to say you can't do that. Okay? Government is deeply involved. It's involved in the clothes that we wear. Make sure they have the right material that's not flame, whatever the opposite of flame retardant is. They have to meet certain standards. Okay? And on top of that, if they come from another country, they probably have a tariff on them, a tax on them. It's really hard to think of how government isn't involved in things. So that's why the definition extends to the whole of society. The last part, government can legitimately use force. And this, we must remember, all the social protests, the Black Lives Matters protests that have taken place in the summer of 2020 going into the fall of 2020, they are just a reminder that government has force behind it. The police can use the guns. People get killed because of police action. Government has power behind it. And we always must remember. There's a saying that George Washington is supposed to have said. Whether it's true or not is another story, but we'll give him credit for it anyway. The saying is, government is not reason. Government is not eloquence. Government is force. We must always remember that to understand government. In the end, it has power behind it. Okay? Now, I want to read to you as a closing thought a quote that came from a French guy back in 1849. So 171 years ago, this guy said this thing. Okay? And I think it sums up what government is capable of. His name is Pierre Joseph Proudhon. And he said, to be governed is to be watched, inspected, spied upon, directed, law-ridden, regulated, penned up, indoctrinated, preached at, checked, appraised, seized, censured, commanded by beings who have neither title, knowledge, nor virtue. To be governed is to have every operation, every transaction, every movement noted, registered, counted, rated, stamped, measured, numbered, assessed, licensed, refused, authorized, endorsed, admonished, prevented, reformed, redressed, corrected. His point in 1849 was that government is in our business. That, in essence, is the job of government. And that was in 1849. Today, with what you can do with the cell phone and the technology that's embedded in the cell phone, the government can do all of these things, and often without our knowledge. Government is in our face. Government has force behind it. And government, for better or for worse, is just made up of humans. Okay? All right, that concludes this tape. There's more later.